Welcome back from that. Ogochukwu Mobuno. That was a very fantastic one. I think you were able to capture the democracy. We're just looking at the picture of Abiola, MKO Abiola there, and we're like, hey, come on. When we saw the picture of the then president, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, we're like, wow. A lot of people are calling different names, when they showed his picture. I don't know, you don't ask me the kind of names, everyone have names they call people in power for praise, maybe for whatever reason anyway. Well, that's that from Social Boss. Well, we want to go into the second conversation today. Like I said, we will be having guests in the studio that will be giving us different perspectives of what happened on June 12, 1993, that resulted to the annulment of one of the best elections held so far in Nigeria, according to Nigerians. And of course, what has been the implication? How did we get here? The politicians that we have right now, are they good custodians of our democracy? These are things we'll be looking at. What has been the impact of the June 12th annulment? Then, where are we as far as democracy is concerned? This will be some of the things we'll be talking about today on this very segment. And I have my guests joining me. In fact, it's so good that we have an information professional here who is going to be giving us some details. So if it's possible, I want all of us to pay attention to this discussion, because it's very, very important, especially the Gen Zs, right? You need to be part of history. A lot of you hear June 12, but you don't know what June 12 is all about. We want to talk about June 12 right now. All right, my guest today is an information professional and a public affairs analyst in the person of Ogunloye Benedict Agunloye, I beg your pardon, Agunloye Benedict. That is Olalekon. Yes, if I got it correctly. It's good to have you join us today.
It's my pleasure being here.
June 12. June 12, a lot of people, when they hear June 12, what comes to mind is MKO Abiola, and of course, that it has been marked as a very special day, celebrated everywhere in Nigeria today, even though some persons are saying, well, we're going to hit the street in protest in about how many states of Nigeria today, including Lagos State. Now, let's look at June 12. What do you make of June 12? What's your thoughts about June 12?
Well, when you talk about June 12, for some of us, you will see it as the culminating point of a long stretch, the road to civil rule. The military did not call it the road to democracy. It was the path to military rule. That's what we had from IBB. So it was a transition from the military to the civilian. We've had party formation, party cancellation, we've had zero-party election, people formed 13 parties and they were not registered. Then you have the two government parties. And then we started the process. Then we come to the concept of banning, unbanning, rebanning. Then we have our National Institute for Democratic Studies, which I think produced the likes of Barnabas Gemadi and co, who were like, okay, we need to have a new political culture. We need to have people that are trained. We need to have people that understand what to run in the system. And of course, maybe a professor Omorui from Uniben at the time came into Abuja to come and oversee that. So you will see that finally on June 12, we believe that, after all, we have done governorship election, the chairman were in place, the governors are in place, the Senate and the rest of National Assembly have been elected. So all we just needed to do was elect the president and let's complete the process. So it was meant to be a culminating point. A lot of hope were on it, and I think Abiola came up with a campaign of hope 93, basically. So annulling the election, therefore, it's more like wasting a 7.5 years long effort of different people from different parts of the nation, and would also be to the international community like a major somersault of a kind that is difficult to understand. I think a writer at the time put it as the end of an era, and I'm not sure we've come back to the level of political, do we say, microcosm that we had at the time, where everybody was moved, mobilized. Mamsa was there to chase people. Diffree was there to show that, okay, government can be present in every local government and in every state, whether it was on 3.5 kilometer or 7 kilometer roads they were doing here and there. A lot of things were happening, and the people were following the program of the government. I think that up until now, I don't think there has been any other Nigerian regime that was able to make the people follow what they are doing like we had with the IBB regime. NDU was popular to the grassroots. Whether People's Bank work or fail, almost every electoral ward heard about it, knew about it. Mamsa was everywhere, telling us, so much so that even farmers can explain what the second-tier foreign exchange market at the time meant, because it's been translated to their languages and we have Mamsa explaining it to them. So to me, it was more like a nation was imagined, and then suddenly it fizzled out. That's the way I see it.
All right, that's the way you see June 12. Now, it has been said that the June 12 election is one of the most free and fair elections in Nigeria. What's your thought about that?
Well, I think I agree. Now, give it to Professor Mpurosu. Now, what you know in our system is simple, and that is basic. And that is that what we understand, we destroy. What we do not understand, we make effort to condemn. So basically, when he came up with the option E4, the politicians did not understand the process. A number of them condemned it. But because it was a military government in place, and they have decided, oh, this is the only way we are going to follow to have an election, then there was some measure of agreement. So it was not initially about building consensus. It is about go to your local, to your ward, and start standing election from there. Now, what you will see in the option A4 system is that it intermarries our culture with what we are trying to copy. We are trying to copy the American system. Whether our politicians agree or not, that's what they wanted. That's what they are trying to do. From the days of Zeke till now, that's what we've been trying to do. Push ourselves to look like the Americans, so that we can make people forget their tribe and forget religion and this and that. And I think I have never agreed with that, and that should form part of why we have issues. When you have differences that are fundamental, like religion, like tribe, you need to understand it. When we understand our differences, then we will leverage on it, and then we will be able to work together. So anybody who is quick to say forget your differences, for me, is making mistake. If players forget their differences, you are going to have a Franco Baresi in the 18 box, and the Nobajo will be at defense. And then you are going to pass a ball to Baresi and he won't know what to do with it. He's going to think he's still a defender and fire a shot that might possibly send the ball out of the field, not just out of the field, into the crowd, and injure people. Because you have not understood that there is a difference between a Robert Baggio as a striker and a Franco Baresi as a defender. So we must understand what each of us is what we are made up of, and then understand the strength of the individual tribes, understand the strength of the individual person, and then come to a table to work together. So you will see that option A4 to an extent try to marry what is in our cultural leaning, which is, I would always say, is the parliamentary system, not the American presidential system. Because we have clan, we have quarters, we have communities, we have kingdoms, before we have union of kingdoms. And then we run together. Now, we all understood at that level that we are all what? Different. But we can always work together if we have some sets of agreement. So as against somebody who is not known in his local government, standing in federal election, and then winning, option A4 was more like, look, go and start from the grassroots. So by the time you get to the national, you have passed through some stages. You have passed through the ward, you have passed through the local government, you have passed through the state. And so at this point, you possibly have only one person representing a state, and that everybody in the state would have agreed, no, he actually defeated us in the election at the state. So it's not like anybody is going to press or going to the court to challenge candidacy of the individual.
Was that what played out in 1993?
In 1993, that was what played out with option A4 until it culminated in the National Convention, where of course the PDP had theirs in Jos, or the SDP had their convention in Jos that possibly couldn't produce a clear candidate at the initial stage, and they needed to do a runoff between King Gibe and MKO. But basically, the build-up process was from the ground, and we're building up gradually till you get to the peak of it. And of course, having an open ballot or an open secret ballot on the final election day was also good. Because it was also like the first time where you are almost sure the number of people are credited, and then you could see the number of votes. Remember that we have had open ballot for local government election. It was a total open ballot. You queue for a party and we count. There were no ballot papers. For me, that was cheap, it was transparent, and was good enough. But however, our politician and political system being what it was, at the presidential election, it has to be open secret, which is you first of all queue up, but you still have to thumbprint to have the ballot paper. So it was still to a large extent more transparent than all the elections before it. And the good thing about that election, where you will give the integrity to it, is even people who hated that regime, who hated the person of IBB, had never denied the fact that the election was free and fair.
All right. This is about 22 to
32 years ago.
32 years ago. And as it is right now, coming down the line from 1993, that's 32 years down the line, what impact has that 1993 June 12 election had on our democracy, walking down memory lane?
Well, are we getting more democratic? I possibly still do not agree. We have had civil rule, and we have been transiting and rigmaroling with the civil rule. Now, one of the questions build up to June 12, I would always remember, as I think by then I've been involved with student unionism both at the institutional level and even to an extent at the national level. At least we were present in all the congresses, so I could state what happened in every NANS election from 1992 to 1995.
That's a long time.
So whether it was the siege in Calabar or the rigmarole in BUK in 1993, or back to AU in 1994, we know what and what transpired in between. But we knew that from 1992, for me, NANS lost it in a way. ASU was beginning to have their strike. It was only 5 weeks in 92, was almost 3 months in 93. As a matter of fact, during the June 12 election, all students, all university students in Nigeria were at home because ASU was on strike. But you will see that NANS at that time was more of always talking about IBB must go. That was the only slogan you hear from Segun Mayegun. And even when Kura took over, you actually heard less from Kura for his 1 year. And then you had the Dika Kasala debacle, when of course there were possibly 2 factions and 2 presidents, but everything was still, when it moved from, and after that IBB left, a lot of steam between the civil society, the students, and all the coalition, a lot of steam died. Why? Because they were passionate and built for IBB. IBB must go. So suddenly when IBB stepped aside, they couldn't move forward immediately. Why? Because the preparation was to fight IBB. But from about 92, we've been asking CDHR and CD, Campaign for Democracy at the time, most times represented in NANS function by Femi Falana-San. You would always, like at the time, ask, after IBB, what next? Not Shima Ubani, I think it's late now, from CD, no Femi Falana, no Beko could tell us specifically what is next after IBB. And so some of us were not surprised after IBB that for about 3 to 6 months, the crowd and the noise calmed down. And so then the only thing that now became a rallying point was to like, okay, let's fight for the actualization of June 12. And then that fight continues throughout the Abacha regime. It was okay, bring back June 12, declare the winner of the election, do this and do that and do that. And you have an Abacha who was stubborn enough to keep saying, my regime is a child of necessity. We have to save the nation. I did not annul the election, but we need to save the nation. But you see, some of those stories were neither here nor there. But what you will see clearly is that the civil society and their affiliates, all through the period, were not building up for how to run government or how government will be run. They were only concerned about the military must go. And some of the things they say were, the worst civil rule is better than the best military. That is always their cliche. But the practical reality we will put in focus is that because they did not prepare for governance at the time, even when the military decided to leave, people who were less prepared took the experiment in 1999 and came in. And because they had the power, they began to sustain or create situation that will perpetuate them and their cronies in power. So basically, I will forever insist, the presidential kind of democracy we run today is not the best for a multi-ethnic and multi-religious nation like us. We are not 3 tribes, we are not 2 religions. So those who also live with that bigotry, I think they do not understand the nation and are not fit to run the nation. So we need people who have more understanding. We need to recognize, acknowledge, understand our differences, and decide how best we are going to work together. You know, I always tell this that most people could understand football. I will still remember somebody asking me, why do you play well with what's his name, with Etophilus. He said, my friend knows where the goal post is. He said, so I know wherever he is, if you get the ball to him, the ball will get to the goal post. That is an understanding. So when I have the ball, the first person I want to locate is where is Eto. Why? Because I have the confidence that he knows the goal post. That's understanding. That's what is playing out. So when people live together, if they do not understand themselves, they will continue to have wrong assertions, they will continue to have wrong intentions, they will continue to have wrong assumptions. And when those things, when everything is wrong, planning can never be right. So when we talk about building a nation in the modern world, you will always look at the people. You will always look at the processes. From an understanding of the people and the process, you will know where and what technology you require. And then you will apply it. And then they can form a team that will storm and norm and work together. But when we continue to live in the assumption of what happens, a Nigerian governor wants to behave like a California governor. But the governor of California is controlling an economy that is bigger than the whole of Africa. Than an economy that is almost as strong as the whole of Europe. When we take out perhaps only Germany and the UK. The rest of Europe put together does not have an economy that is strong as California. But a governor in Nigeria cannot even raise $1 trillion. But why are you talking about $1 billion? You cannot raise it in a year. But he wants to think and talk and act like the governor of California. Because they call him a governor, he is also a governor. But we need to look at our environment. We need to look at our people. We need to look at who we are. And when we look at that dispassionately, then we can put the right data on the table. Today is a cliche. Somebody says Wasobia. I say no, I've never agreed with that, and I'm not going to agree with that. Because when you take together the people of the South, together they are possibly more than some of the tribes you were talking about. Oh yes, they can be Joe, Bibio, Urubo, Shekiri, this and that. But they have their numbers. They are not Yoruba, they are not Hausa, they are not Igbo. So why do we want to treat them as if there are only 3 tribes in Nigeria? Maybe the southeast is Igbo, the southwest Yoruba dominated with few Ijo and a few others. The northwest maybe Hausa dominated with a few other people. But you cannot say that of the south, the north central, and the northeast. And so if half of the nation is none of the 3, why are we trying to insist that is the only way to go, or that is the pattern with which to share? Insecurity came first because for a very long time we neglected the northeast. Up until 2011, appeal court cases in the northeast are determined in Jos. Jos is in the north central, but everybody in the northeast come to Jos. The entire troops in the northeast mostly are also controlled by the 3rd Armored Division in Jos. So military, you run the northeast from Jos. Judiciary, you run the northeast from Jos. And a number of other things were done in similar fashion. Now the long-time neglect of that environment got us to where some minor group can decide to become a government to themselves and a government to the people. And when the governor came, of course, make attempt to challenge them, they, because they have some measure of control, can decide to go out there. So when you look at the basis, the fact that we do not see the nation as a conglomerate of several tribes shows our disrespect to a large extent, therefore, for what we will call democracy.
So can we say at this point in time that the issue of I think we need to be one Nigerian, forget about your tribe, forget about your ethnicity, your religion, and all of that. Do you think that's part of the problem we have? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. What I'm saying is we are a one nation and we can be a one nation. Like I've taken it back, right? Brazil and Cameroon will not be friends if they play at the World Cup. But when Ronaldinho and Eto'o gets back to back, they at that point they are in a team and they would work as a team. It doesn't matter. Brazil and Argentina have never been friends. So in Spain and Portugal. Messi speak Spanish. The Neymar speak Portuguese. But they both will meet in Barcelona and in PSG and wherever and play together and connect effectively. So what we are saying is, let's understand that we are different.
Okay.
And then agree to work together on some set of rules. Forgetting differences. That's why I said you put a defender in the box and then you pull across and you expect him to do justice. You're wasting your time. But if you know he is a defender, right, and then you will put him where he belongs. If he finds himself in an opportune place and by chance score the goal, that doesn't convert him automatically to a scorer. It's just a struggle. But the team has to be built as a team, and you need to know the individuals that are there. Who is the midfielder? Who is the attacker? Who is the defender? Who should be like a goalkeeper? Who should be like a coach to who? Do you need one coach for everybody, or do you need to have specialists to train people who will take free kick, who will do this, who will do that? Until you understand the different elements that makes up the nation, and we agree to live together, we will continue to take some people as hostage. And when you take them as hostage, they will continue to rebel. Because even at creation, God asked man to dominate what he created, not man to dominate man.
Oh, not man to dominate man. But then, well, as it is right now, let's quickly look at the current dispensation that we have. June 12th has come and gone. We're commemorating it today. The anniversary has been 32 years down the line. Why not look at the current set of politicians that we have? Because these are drivers of democracy. Can we say democracy is safe in the hands of the current politicians and public office holders that we have?
Well, you will say civil rule is safe in their hand because that is what they have and that is what they understand. I still do not believe
that there is democracy in Nigeria.
Our politicians understood what democratic norms mean. So as far as I'm concerned, we are in a civil rule and we are running a civil rule. And I will explain that to you. We are different. There are different agitations here and there. Some of the agitations, whether for secession or for this or for that, I can assure you that some of them are baseless, some of them are just word of mouth. But because you allow it to fester, then it will look like something serious. Between 99 and now, we've seen the Ishekiri people, we've seen the Yoruba Ijo people in Lagos, we've seen a lot of crises here and there. You would expect that if we're actually in a democracy and we recognize that we are multi-ethnic and multi-religion, perhaps we should have put a clause. There should have been somewhere in the constitution where we can define the need. Because you have said an individual can decide that he no longer wants to be a Nigerian citizen. So if I can decide personally that I don't want to be a Nigerian citizen, then the people should also have a right to self-determination. The constitution should give them an opportunity for referendum where you say, okay, as an Akoko person, I no longer want to be addressed as a Nigerian. I want to be addressed as an Akoko man, as an Akoko nation. You should give us, as Akoko people, the opportunity to have a referendum. If more people say they want to stay, then some of us who do not want to stay can then decide to resign our citizenship as individual and go to wherever we so please, or decide to agree with the majority of our people and stay. But until such a clause exists in the constitution, I think that we are not being democratic. We've seen each time we have had debate, whether all our debates, all our constitutional reform debate or national conference debate, go and check it. You will see that there is a provision or a popular demand for parliamentary system of government. But have we put that to vote? Has even the National Assembly find time to debate that? They have not. And that's why I said we are in a civil rule, not in a democracy. Because democracy, we say, is government of the people, by the people, for the people. Is it not? Right now, I don't think that the government we have is a government of the people. It's a government of the politicians, for the civil servants and businessmen. And their cronies.
Not for the people,
not for the people, not by the people. Because if you ask the people what do they want, I would always insist, if we are being a parliamentary system today, we possibly should have less problem than we have. Why? Possibly in the last election, if it was a parliamentary election with just 180 seats or less than that, you would have discovered that the coalition, some people would have been able, maybe NNPP, Labour and PDP would have been able to say, okay, let's form a coalition. And they would have formed the government and not the APC. Because they have majority. If you put them together, they can muster majority in the National Assembly. But what that would also have meant is that all their leaders who are today shouting outside would either have been in the parliament as people in government or as the opposition leaders. In which case, we would have been dealing with the nation problem on the table of the parliament and not at international press conferences and not name calling and demarketing the nation across the world, because you would have been available to say whatever you have to say in the house and would have been able to run better. But we've not had that discussion at the National Assembly level. Nobody has said, okay, let's even put it to a referendum. And those are the things we're saying, until you have a way by which you can test the waters with the people. Until you have referendum for certain things inserted in the Constitution, then what will still continue to run will be the civil rule, in my opinion, and not a democracy.
All right. Because today is June 12th.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that election that was annulled. What do you think would have happened if that election stayed? Do you think, because it's one thing for you to do a free and fair election, do all the manifestos and come into office and still keep the standard of democracy, even though you said we shouldn't call it democracy, that is a transition from military to civil rule. But then what Nigerians know is democracy, like we have been told. Do you think if that election stood, would it have been able to stand the test of time? And do you think we would have had a better democracy or transition, like we say?
Well, a whole lot of issues were there. I remember back then you would hear a commentary like IBB saying, we don't know who will succeed us, but we know those who will not. Right? And those he claimed he knows who will not. Of course, one of them is late, but was a key factor in determining what also happened at the just convention. And when you go back to that, he's got more control and has built more bridges around the nation at the time than anybody. And going into the election, there had been a fallout between him and MKO. And some of those who are close to him have said in the press at some point that we didn't support MKO because we wanted him to be president. We supported him, we know, because he has the Western press behind him. And so IBB, we are going to be able to push IBB out of office. So for them, their target wasn't the civil rule per se. It is getting IBB out of office.
Why did they really want him out? They don't want the military regime?
By and large, whatever it was, you will say they achieved their aim in a way. even though they did not get it right with all the other things they hoped for. But at least they got an IBB out of office. And it was the popularity of the Western press that followed MKO that helped in ensuring that that feat of IBB stepping down was achieved. Otherwise, it would just have said with the noise of the vocal minority and settle down and do some adjustment and sort out some people. But because the noise was much and the coalition against him seems to be strong, he needed to step aside. So given that understanding of that set of people and their coordination and presence, if they are not committed to good governance at the time, I would have doubted the ability of the government to do all that it has promised at the center. Note that the governors at the time, majority of them were loyal to this individual and not to MKO. Right? And then when you also move a bit further, you will also note that when you talk about agriculture and this and that, up till now, the land belongs to the states. That's why some of us will jokingly call Wike FCT governor, because it's the one that signs CFO. Only governor signs CFO. Apart from Wike, any other person signing CFO is governor of a state, basically. So it means that you can't also just come into the state and think you want to use the land for whatever. It doesn't matter your justification. If the governor disagrees, the chances are that you can't go to any court to get it. You just have to convince the governor. So if you don't get the governors to work with you, yes, on paper, Hope 93 was a beautiful document. Oh, we tell Nigerians the number of barrels of oil we produce in a day. We tell them the number of barrels we export. Now, when you are outside, it's also good to make some promises. A player who had never stepped on a particular pitch will possibly think of 1,000,001 things he would have done. But by the time you get on the pitch, that's when you will know whether the grass is synthetic or natural.
All right, so we have just a few minutes to the end of this discussion. But then, if I don't talk about I don't know what to call that book right now, the one written by the former military president, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, where it was being said that he wasn't the one that annulled the election of 1993, the June 12 election, and that it was General Sani Abacha, and that brought a lot of controversy. What does that, the whole story, the whole scenario, what does it mean to the annulment of the June 12 election? In just a minute or two.
Well, basically, you talk about the Armed Forces Ruling Council. When Don Kabali was resigning or retiring, he said the army or the government was in one house show. Remember, you can go and find out. Don Kabali made that statement. General D.Y.O. Don Kabali made that statement when he was stepping down as the defense minister, and Abacha was going to step up from being the chief of army staff to be the chief of defense staff. So to an extent, we always talk about a team. I don't think that they are individual decisions, basically. So I also think it would be wrong to put the blame at the doorstep of just an Abacha alone. The truth today is that Abacha is gone, but the likes of David Mark are still alive. Lawa Gwadabe and the other boys who were close to the top at the time. So if anything, those are the people we should be interrogating. As a matter of fact, rather than banditing words with IBB, it should be to sit down David Mark and the rest of his gang, who then were called the IBB boys, and ask them specific questions. So whether they were the IBB boys or the Abacha boys, they are those who should put light to the matter. But basically, for me, annulment cannot be a one-man decision. There would have been a number of people who had vested interest and who thought that their interests are being hampered, or some of whom might even be seeing some things that you and I have not been able to see.
Oh.
So rather than a quick wholesale of let's nailed IBB or let the people, investigative journalism can go on. A national colloquium could be said, bring those actors that are still alive and let them answer some questions.
I wish we have all the time. I wanted to ask if all of that is still necessary, coming to right.
Very necessary.
Well, because what happened has happened already. We can't turn back the hands of time to say, well, let's bring Abiola back. From the great beyond, let's get back to 1993.
No, we are not going back to 1993.
But then we need to put
you need to learn from the past. And then use it to prepare for the future.
Well,
but if you forget the past, the future is already jeopardized.
It's jeopardized.
So it's collateral damage.
That's the reason why we have all of this drama in our democracy today.
Well, like I said, the people managing the civil rule today are actors. Many of them are not trained in any form of leadership. They just find the opportunity.
For their own personal reasons, not for Nigerians.
Ujima has described them very well, but he is not different from what he described. He described himself, and so that is who they are.
And he's referring to others.
Yeah, so they all are kakitostocrat and kleptomania, as he will claim it. That's who he is, and that's what his friends that they are running the system together.
Now, this is going to be the size of the conversation. The conversation is heated up. And as you can see, we will be discussing democracy all through today in almost all our programs, because this is a day to really talk about so many things. Agunoye for joining us on the program this morning. Well, viewers out there, this is going to be the end of this discussion. Global Morning will soon come to an end, but then let's go on a quick break. When we return, we'll tell you the next line of action. Many thanks, our guests and all our viewers there. Don't go, just keep tab on the channel, because so much lined up for you today. We'll return after this break.